10 years after the events of the legendary War of the Seven against Thebes, the Argives were still mourning their defeat while the city of Cadmus stood tall, ruled by King Laodamas, the son of Eteocles. However, the children of the 7 heroes that had fallen before the Cadmean gates were determined to avenge the loss of the previous generation. They were determined to conquer Thebes. They were called the Epigoni. In Greek mythology, the War of the Seven against Thebes had profound consequences in both Cadmea and Argos. The curse of the former king Oedipus ultimately had both of his sons, Eteocles and Polynices, fight for the Theban throne until their demise at the hands of each other. King Eteocles was succeeded by his young son Laodamas. As the new king was still underage at the time, the role was assumed by the aging regent Creon. The first act of Creon was to arrange the burial for fallen Eteocles, which was done with full honors. The body of his brother, however, was forbidden from being buried. Polynices was considered a traitor for having allied with the Argives in an attempt to take over Thebes, and thus Creon ordered his body to be left to rot on the battlefield. The penalty of death was issued to whoever attempted to bury the traitor. Despite this, the proclamation is eventually broken by Eteocles' and Polynices' own sister Antigone, who herself was married to Creon's son Haemon. The Theban princess went on to bury Polynices' body, earning the wrath of the regent. Creon ordered Antigone to be entombed alive as punishment, something that shocked not only her, but many of the leading citizens of the city. Eventually, he was persuaded by prophet Tiresias to allow Polynices' burial and reverse his decision. Unfortunately, it was too late. When Creon arrived at the tomb where Antigone was supposed to be buried alive, he learned that the princess had already hanged herself rather than suffer such horrific punishment. Creon's own son, Haemon, then attacked his father and reportedly attempted to kill him, although unsuccessful. Haemon too ended up taking his own life. Things in Thebes were not well, and Creon's reign as Laodamas' regent was yet to see the worst of it. The struggle for the Cadmean throne was not yet over. A prince named Lycus the Younger, whose family was exiled from Thebes to Euboea during the previous generation, used this opportunity and returned to the city. He killed the aging Creon and proclaimed himself the ruler of Thebes. However, he too was soon to have the same fate. One of Laodamas' allies was none other than Heracles, the greatest hero in all of Hellas. Heracles unexpectedly returned to Thebes and slew Lycus, thus restoring Laodamas as king. This time, there was to be no regency. Laodamas assumed the throne. Meanwhile, in Argos, the time for mourning was slowly coming to an end. Successors of the 7 against Thebes wanted vengeance for the defeat and death of their fathers. This new generation of Argive heroes was called the Epigoni, meaning the offsprings. King Adrastus, who had led the original expedition, although himself not counted among the 7 champions, was still in power. He was the only survivor of the disastrous campaign, now an old man heading the house of Bias and serving as one of the 3 co-kings of Argos. The house of Melampus was headed by King Aphilochus, whose father Amphiaraus was among the fallen 7. Lastly, the house of Anaxagoras was represented by King Sthenelus, a son of another fallen hero, Capaneus, and Evadne, the daughter of the previous king Iphis. The Argive leadership thus decided that another war was to be launched against Thebes, with the objective to finally conquer the city, remove Laodamas from power and end Eteocles' dynasty, Cadmeia. Both Amphilachus and Sthenelus, the rulers of Argos, were thus among the Epigoni. Among them were also Alcmaeon, the brother of King Amphilachus, Aegialeus, the son of King Adrastus, Diomedes, son of deceased Tydeus of Aetolia, one of the foremost of the fallen seven champions, Polydorus, the son of fearsome Hippomedon, Euryalus, son of Megistaeus, an Argive prince who had also fallen in the War of the Seven, and is sometimes included as one of the champions themselves, Promachus, Biantes, and Lesimenes, the sons of Arcadian hero Parthenopeus, and Thersander, with his two brothers Adrastos and Timaeus, sons of Polynices of Thebes, on whose behalf the original war was launched. The aging Basileus Adrastus also joined the campaign, although personally not considered as one of the Epigoni themselves. Upon deciding on who should lead the expedition, the Argives consulted the Delphian oracle. The Pythia instructed them to put Alcmaeon at the helm. Initially, Prince Alcmaeon had no intention of even joining the Epigoni, let alone leading them, but was nevertheless eventually persuaded by his peers. In one version by Diodorus Siculus, Alcmaeon was persuaded by his mother Eurypyle, who herself was bribed by Thersander with the robe of Harmonia, just as he had been bribed in the past by Polynices with a cursed necklace. However, according to other sources, such as Asclepiadis of Trogilas, Alcmaeon had already decided in his youth that when he was old enough, he'd wage war on Thebes and fulfill the prophecy of his father. Whatever the case may be, Epigoni gathered a large force and selected Alcmaeon as their leader. The army marched on Boeotia, eager to inflict vengeance upon the city of Cadmus. The epic poem of the Theban cycle from the 8th century BCE, called the Epigoni, which reportedly contained 7,000 lines of verse, is unfortunately lost. Likewise, the 5th century tragedy Epigoni by Sophocles, which was based on the epic, was also lost, thus depriving us of detailed portrayal of the events that followed. Although various fragments of the tragedy survived, with several others having been attributed to the epic, only the first line of the original epic poem is known for certain. It reads, "Now, Muses, let us begin to sing of younger men." What we do know is that these younger men, the Epigoni, eventually engaged with the Theban army led by King Laodamas. The battle ended with a decisive Argive victory. All of the Epigoni survived except for Aegialeus, son of King Adrastus, who himself was ironically the only one that had survived the previous war. Theban King Laodamas was reportedly slain by Alcmaeon, with the Epigoni finally making their way to Cadmeia with no more opposition. The remaining Theban defenders sought counsel of the seer Tiresias, and upon his advice decided to abandon any resistance and flee. The Argives thus finally conquered Thebes and installed Thersander on the Cadmeian throne, thus restoring and vindicating the lineage of Polynices. They now secured a strong and powerful ally, and triumphantly marched back to Argolis. The only person not celebrating was the old king Adrastus, who was instead grieving the death of his son and would-be successor Aegialeus. The old Basileus did not make it back to Argos. While marching on their way back home, the army made a stop at Megara. King Adrastus passed away of grief and old age. His only remaining descendant was Diomedes, his grandson through his daughter Deipyle, which he had given in marriage to Tydeus. Upon returning to Argos, Diomedes was crowned new king for the house of Bias and assumed his position as one of the 3 Argive rulers, alongside Amphilachus and Sthenelus. The War of the Epigoni was the last great conflict in Greece before the outbreak of the Trojan War several years later. we will continue with the episodes from Greek mythology, so make sure to subscribe. If you wish to support the channel further, feel free to join us as exclusive YouTube member. This way you will help the channel grow quicker, upload videos more frequently, and keep increasing its quality. In return, you will gain access to the exclusive videos, artwork, updates, polls, ability to decide on future content, and more. This was WanaxTV, and we'll see you again soon.